That's usually the bad part when it's 4 in the afternoon and it's like.
All right, so let's start. We're going to do some more arrays, and I've created this long array with a bunch of numbers in it, and if you want this to follow along, let me pause this. All right, so it's a long array. It's got a bunch of numbers in it. So we learned some methods yesterday. How could I use some Ruby code to figure out how many elements are in my array? Okay, numbers.count. All right, so let's run this. And I have 100 numbers in there. So that's an array with 100 random numbers in it. And I can do all kinds of other stuff. If you go and look at the documentation for Ruby and the array method, the array class, sorry, it has a bunch of methods in here. Like, oh, they don't show them here. Well, they must be on another class, so forget that for now. There are methods like I can say, find me the largest element in the array. What is the largest element in this array? So let's run this. And it looks through the array, and it looks like you would. You're going to scan this. You're going to look at each one, and 90 is in my head. Okay, that's good. I'm going to look for the next one. Anything bigger than 90 that I've found so far? No. And this is how the computer does it. They're going to compare every element. Here's a 97. Okay, so now I'm comparing everything against 97. Yada, yada, yada. Oh, here's 100. That's the biggest one I've seen so far. Yada, 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 all the way to the end. So 100 is the biggest number. All right, so everybody see how that works? So I want to take something and write our own version of max, because this is a common concept. Even though Ruby has it built in, the idea of inspecting every element in the array, looking at them one at a time, and comparing them, doing something with them is very common. It's a common programming task. Yes?
Is there a max for alphabetical versus?
Yes. If these are all strings, it's going to find max well, we can play with that later. It does do an alphabetical sort as well. All right, so let's figure out, first of all, if I use a while loop, how would I loop through this array, inspecting every one of them, and try to figure out which is the largest element without using the numbers.max. So let's start. We have our standard array, while loop. We have an initial condition. Count equals 0 while count is less than what? Remember these, you're supposed to write in your sleep. What we're going to loop through until we get to the end of the array. How do we know how many are in the array itself? All right, so numbers.count. That gives me the total number that we have. And then right away I'm going to write my incrementer and my counter. I'm going to increment my count. And then I want to do something with that. Now, what we did yesterday was we printed out these numbers, right? We just printed them to the screen. But if I want to inspect this number and compare it against something, what would I do? If, good start. What am I comparing? Well, in your head, if you were to scan this, you've got to think like a computer. I can only look at one number at a time, right? So I'm going to look at this number and say, okay, I'm going to go through this entire array, and this is the first number. I want to see if I have the largest number. So I've only looked at this one. This, by default, is the largest number I've seen so far. By default, the first one is the biggest one I've seen, right? So I store that in my head in a variable somewhere, in a brain cell, and I move on to the next one. I compare, is the one in my brain cell, because I only have one left, the one in my brain cell, does that compare to the next element here. So 26 is 90 less than 26? No, but your mind instantly does that. So we move on to the next one, and is 20 greater than 96? 90? No. Is 85 greater than 90? No. We're moving along in our head, comparing to the one that we saved in a variable, in a cell in our head, and comparing each one against that. If we find one that's greater, what do? So I'm moving along through this. Yeah, we replace the variable. So at some point, here we go. 97 is now greater than 90. So I rip out that brain cell. I put in 97 in a new brain cell, or overwrite that brain cell. And now 97 is the one I'm going to be comparing all these to. So until I get to the end of my loop. So we set up our loop. I want to compare my brain cell, my storage for the largest value, and I'm going to call it largest. If my largest is less than the new value, then the new value has to become my new largest, right? Does that make sense? So the value, how do I get the value out of my numbers array? All right, the sum, numbers, sub, count, okay? Because the count is what we're moving through. This count is going to be incremented. If that is, in case true, if the largest is the biggest one I've seen so far, is less than the one I'm looking at now, then I have to swap those, right? I have to throw away my largest and overwrite it with the one I've seen just currently, the most recent one. So how would I do that? How do I overwrite a variable? Okay, good. Largest equals numbers sub count. All right, so the number that I compared against, I'm stuffing it, I'm overwriting my brain cell here, and I'm continuing on. Now, the next time through, largest is a little bit bigger, and it'll compare against the following numbers. So the only problem with this is, what is largest to start with? It's not declared yet, so this will actually crash. Let's run it. It says undefined local variable or method largest. Remember that the variables spring into existence in Ruby the first time something is assigned to it. Not when you compare it, but when you assign something to that. So we've never assigned anything to this variable. So before my count, before my while loop, I have to do something like largest equals what? Very good. We might as well put into that largest, just like when I was going through this, I might as well put the first element of the array into my brain cell, right, into my largest. Because by default, that is the biggest one I've seen so far. No matter what it is, that is going to be the biggest one I've seen so far. So how do I get the first element out of the array? There you go, number sub 0. All right, very good. So let's run this puppy. And at the end, I want to print out what? Largest, right? Largest. Very good. Look at this. Bada boom, look at that. So these came from the count, the max, and then my max equaled what I went through and wrote manually. Yes?
Just for fun, put in a debugger.
Say that again?
Can you stop? Can you put a stop in it?
Oh, sure. All right, I don't do this enough in the debugger because, well, these are simple, yeah. These are simple programs, so I don't think about these in debuggers. But in the debugger, I can put stop points, just like in Visual Studio. I can put stop points anywhere on a line of code. And instead of saying run, I want to say debug. That's the one right next to it here. Or I can right-click and say debug fun with arrays. Okay? And what happens is, if you don't have the debugger installed, RubyMine will ask you to install a Ruby debug gem, and then it will install it in your system, and it should work after that. So once we're in here, it stopped. This blue line tells me I've stopped at my breakpoint, and I can start to look at some values, right? So my largest, if I just hover over that, tells me that largest is 90, right? So that's good. Number sub count is an array of 100 elements. Count is 0. So if I want to look at a particular variable like number subcount, I would put it in my watch over here. I can watch particular expressions. So I can say number subcount, and that happens to be 90. All right, so we're here at this if statement. If 90 is less than 90, we're going to do something with it. Is 90 less than 90? No, so it skips this. And so what? We knew we were going to skip the first one. How might we not do that if we already looked at the first guy? How might we skip the first element? Well, we already stored the first element in our largest array, so why it's a waste of time to compare it against the first one. So how can I skip it and not even look at the first one to start with?
Plus 1.
Yeah, I might start my count here at 1 instead. So I just start my initial condition 1 higher, and now I skip that. But that's a moot point. That's right. Well, this is more processing speed. You know, even still, it's one extra process. Who cares, right? So we can move on. I can say run again, and it'll stop again at the same line. Notice my count went up by 1. My largest is still 90. My number subcount is 26. So is 90 less than 26? No, it's going to skip that. Let's put another breakpoint here and just run this for a while. Oh, I skipped it. It found a 93. And in my scan, see, I skipped that one. I didn't find the 93, I don't think, in my brain scan. So 93 is now my largest. Continues on. And my number subcount over here changes. It's now 49. It's not finding anything bigger than 93. It should find one when I hit 97. It was a ways in there. Well, I can take this breakpoint off and just wait for it to go. There you go. That's faster. So now number subcount is 97. My largest is 93. 93 is 93 less than 97? Yes. So it goes into this loop, and now I'm overriding my largest with the latest largest that I've seen so far. All right? Does that make sense? Easy stuff, huh? Not so much? I don't know. No, absolutely not. So we can do this if we were to take this now, and let's stop the debugger. How could I rewrite this using the each method instead? Okay, so I can say numbers dot each do, we'll have a loop, and I have to have my goalposts here to find out a single element that gets filled in inside the loop. And what are we going to call this? A, no. A is a bad variable name. If I have a plural, and the reason I want you to get used to this is because Rails is big into plural and singular variable names. So numbers is plural, that specifies a collection of stuff. A singular of numbers would be what? Number. So a single number that I'm looking at might be in my goalposts here. All right? Yeah. That's really old school. That's also a bad variable name. Not descriptive. It's an index, I know. I understand. I've used a lot of I's in my time. So inside of this, this loop is already figured out for me. I don't have to do anything. I have to reset my largest. So let me put that down here again. Reset my largest to look at the first element. I'm going to loop through, and every time through this loop, each loop takes care of the counter for me. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to index my array. It gives me the element right here in the number. So what am I going to compare against to see if I have the largest yet? If, all right, largest is less than number, then I want to do the same thing that I did up here. I'm going to stuff largest with the value that's in number. And at the end, I can put out my largest again. All right, so this is identical in functionality to all of this code up here. So I've lost, I don't know what, a couple lines of code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 8. I gained two less lines of code. But I think this reads nicely. I don't have to worry if my counter's set right. I don't have to worry if I'm indexing the right thing. It does read a lot nicer. So there we go. We got 100 all the way through. Everybody's happy here. All right, any questions on that? All right, and the reason I show you this way is not every language has an each method. Every language has a while loop, though. So that's something you need to be able to write those in your sleep again. So let's do some other methods. There's a minimum. I can do a numbers.min. And that prints out, it scanned all the elements basically the way we did it here, and it found the smallest number is 2. All right, as an exercise at home, try to write this method so that you find the minimum, the smallest number in the array, without using the min function. That would be a good practice for you. I know you guys all run home and write Ruby code all night long. All right, how about if we take this element here, this loop, and we only want to print every number that's greater than 90. How would we do that? How would I modify this each loop here? Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it down here, and I'm going to loop through all my numbers one at a time, and if my number is greater than 90, I want to print out that number. So let's just do a puts here. So that will tell me how many of the elements in that array are greater than 90. All right, it printed out all of these values, 93, 97, 92, 98, 97, all the way up to 92. So there were several that it printed out. All right, so this kind of a concept, this type of a loop structure is used constantly. All right, sorting. There happens to be a method called sort. That's more complicated than where you guys are at right now. Writing a sort method is not easy. The theory behind that is tough. All right, so let's just do this. If you want to tackle it yourself, go ahead. But bubble sort, there's quick sorts, there's insert sorts, there's 10 or 15 different types of sorts. Quick sort. We had to do that when I was in college. We had to write our own versions of sorts, and they're not easy. So here's the array. I just printed out the numbers.sort, and it sorted them all. All right. How might I print them in reverse order and sorted? There you go. Puts. I can call the numbers.reverse first, and then I can call sort on that, because this is an array. I call reverse on it. It returns me another array, so I can do still array type stuff with it, and I call sort on top of that. So I can chain these dot methods together, and there we go. So now it's printing. It printed it twice. Well, that's interesting. It doesn't matter, right? A reverse and a sort, it didn't change the matter. Because I called the sort at the end, it doesn't, that's stupid. So never mind. But I can reverse them. There we go. Yes, there you go. There you're talking. That's what I meant to do. So we're going to sort them first, then reverse it, and now it'll go in reverse order, sorted reverse order. 100 back down to. There you go. See, I meant to do that all along. All right. Any other questions on that? All right. I want to show you a video that I like to show when we get to arrays. When you think of these while loops like this, or these each loops, you have to think that the computer can only handle one thing at a time, right? I can only grab one thing at a time. I can look at it. I can compare it. I can do some math with it. I can discard it. And then I can go get another element. So this loop structure forces me to look at every element in the array one at a time and decide to do something with it. So I have a fun little video of Lucille Ball. Here, anybody know who Lucille Ball is? Couple. Not as many as that used to be. That is on YouTube, and I won't show it in my video, but you can search for Lucille Ball Chocolate Factory, and you'll find that video. So let me show that.